Hello and welcome to today's show. We're going to be talking about a very controversial subject, and that is the horse racing whip. In August 2019, Labour revealed plans to review and, if not ban, the horse whip. So I'm joined today by Philip Davies, a Conservative MP. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you.
So how did you get into the horse racing industry? What brought you to the table?
It was my parents, really. My mum owned a betting shop in Doncaster when I was growing up. From virtually the time I was born, she owned a betting office in Doncaster. So as I got older, it was compulsory to be interested in horse racing. My granddad owned some horses with Jack Berry at the time as well. And so there was never any choice in the matter. And, I used to be chalking up after school in the betting shop. I used to settle all the football coupons on a Saturday, which was one of my favourite jobs as I was a teenager. So I was just sort of brought up with horse racing, and it's sort of a family obsession, really.
So I guess I just wanted to start off by getting a bit of insight about you and possibly asking you kind of what these plans that Labour have announced mean.
Well, as far as I can see, the Labour Party have jumped on the bandwagon and seen that there's a controversy about the whip. And basically they thought that there's something in this, and so they've decided that their policy at the next election will be to ban the whip being used in horse racing if they get elected, God forbid. I don't think there's any knowledge behind it or anything. It's just jumping on a bandwagon.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that as far as, because obviously they've sided with the animal rights protesters as far as it goes, have they actually done any research to, as far as you know, any research about the whip?
No, absolutely none at all. As from what I can tell, they haven't gone and spoken to people in the racing industry about it, or gone to learn about it from jockeys or people who actually know what they're talking about. This isn't about evidence or anything like that. It's simply about virtue signalling and jumping on an animal rights bandwagon and trying to appeal to people who are just irreconciled to horse racing anyway.
Do you think it's to get supporters?
Oh, there's certainly a market for it. I'm absolutely sure of that. Largely people who don't know anything about horse racing and don't know anything about horses and don't know anything about riding horses. So I'm sure there's a market for it based on ignorance, but I don't think there's much informed support for it.
What do you think about the education that's out there regarding the whip? Do you think there could be more done to educate people? Do you think we're not going to educate people about it? And I think especially with this manifesto being brought out, what is there in Parliament that's kind of said, OK, this whip is not bad?
I think the horse racing authorities have got themselves into a bit of a muddle over the issue, to be perfectly frank, because just as an illustration, on one hand, there's a limit on the number of times a jockey can use a whip, about 8 times during the course of
a... so it's 7 for flat and 8 for jump, yeah.
Whereas at the same time, the horse racing industry say the whip doesn't hurt. It's air cushioned, it doesn't even hurt you. I mean, people can use it on themselves and find out that it doesn't hurt. Well, it's a mixed message, really. If the whip doesn't hurt, why is there a limit of 7 or 8? You can't really have it both ways. Either it does and you need a limit, or it doesn't hurt and you don't need a limit. And so I think they've got themselves into a bit of a muddle over it. One of the things that I'd like to see the racing industry do, I think they've done a bit of it on course in recent times, but they certainly need to do it in Parliament, is bring a whip into Parliament, host an event in Parliament, bring a whip in, let people see for themselves whether it hurts or not. People could soon see that it doesn't actually hurt, and you could actually probably end most of this nonsense fairly quickly. And I think the other thing, really, is for people in the racing industry to engage more with MPs. I know sometimes MPs aren't either willing or able to engage so much.
Most approachable.
But they prefer to argue out of ignorance. But I think, anyone who's, any trainers, people in the racing industry, invite their local MP to come and see them and actually try and educate them about it would certainly help.
Yeah, I mean, I went into Epsom town centre not too long ago, and I actually brought the whip with me, and I got people to just ask a couple of questions, and I just said, look, have a feel, have a go, and a majority of them had a go, and they didn't find it hurt. And there was even people in there that really disagreed with the horse racing, but actually they found the whip didn't hurt them, and it's because it makes that sound. but it doesn't. And I think it's incredible what that can do by, if you show people that it doesn't, it does change their mind. So I definitely think that's an excellent idea about taking it into Parliament and seeing what their response is, because I don't think they would have much of an argument.
Yeah, you've got to educate people and not allow ignorance just to spread, which is what happens at the moment. And I think the industry's playing a dangerous game, because of course if you start to pander to people who really are irreconcilable to horse racing, I mean, you'll never satisfy these people. I mean, once even if they got rid of the whip, they then want to ban racing altogether, certainly ban jumps racing and all the rest of it. So you can't appease these people. They'll always just bank what you give them and move on. You've got to educate people. There's no substitute for doing that. And I think if the racing industry doesn't do that, it's playing a very dangerous game, because, you know, where do you end? I mean, you know, when people start shoving a horse into a starting stall, a horse that doesn't want to go into the starting stalls, I mean, sometimes that can look not too pretty on the TV, when you've got sort of 6 or 7 men trying to literally heave a horse into the starting stalls against its wishes. Will that be the next thing to go? I just think that the racing industry's got to do a lot more to educate, particularly decision makers, to make sure that they don't fall victim of something just because people are ignorant.
Do you think the British Horse Racing Authority is almost caving in to the animal rights protesters and the claims of, you know, that the industry's cruel?
I think the BHA feel in a difficult situation. I think they feel if they don't do anything at all, that they are going to invite more political trouble. So I think that's their issue. And I think what they're trying to do is born out of good intent. I just think they're playing a dangerous game, and it's not one that I think they should be playing. I think they should be much more robust in standing up for what happens in racing, for the use of the whip. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody loves horses more than the stable staff, more than the trainers, more than the jockeys. Nobody feels it more when one of their horses gets injured. And I think, really, we shouldn't be pandering to uneducated people about these things who haven't been bothered to learn about what goes on in the racing world. I think the BHA have a responsibility to stand up for more for the people who actually are in the racing industry, because they love the horses more than any of the virtue signallers that are complaining about the whip.
Yeah, I think there's a massive divide, isn't there, at the moment? You kind of feel it, because there is also people inside the industry that's saying we should just remove it and get rid of it, but use it for safety purposes only. And I believe that's what Labour's looking into, isn't it, is the encouragement aspect of the whip. And I think we need to kind of come together as an industry and settle this and stick together, because otherwise I think it's giving the animal rights protesters and these people that are completely uneducated, don't have cares for horses, to kind of be let in and to almost make the deciding vote, like, factors of what races we have and everything like that.
You can't just pander to people who are ill-informed. You know, the people in the racing industry who tend to argue against using the whip usually say, oh, well, I don't have a problem with it myself, but it doesn't look good, and in effect it's for public relations exercise. Well, you know, I don't go along with that, really. I think you've got to stand up for what you think is right. You shouldn't just say, well, actually, this is right, but, you know, actually, just to appeal to all these people out there who don't know what they're talking about, we'll do something that we shouldn't be doing. I don't go along with that. I think, really, in the racing industry, we've got an obligation to inform people, to educate people, and to actually show them that actually nobody's more interested in animal welfare than people who are involved in the horse racing industry. And if we're not prepared to stand up for ourselves, then why should we expect other people to stand up for us? It's just not going to happen. So I think we've got to be much more robust.
I just wanted to bring actually a statistic into this, and this was only one horse has been marked by the whip or wielded in the last 2 seasons, and none of all in 2017, from a total of 225,000 runners in that time. What do you think Labour would have to say about that?
Well, like I say, Labour just pandering to a bandwagon and virtue signalling. I'm not sure they know anything. I mean, if you were to speak to Jeremy Corbyn about any of these things, he wouldn't have the first idea what you were talking about, but it doesn't stop him putting it in the Labour manifesto. I mean, he wouldn't have no idea that the whip has changed so much over the years. He wouldn't have the first idea about any of that, I suspect. So this is the problem. When you're trying to reason with people who are being unreasonable, you're never going to win that debate. And like I say, if you got rid of the whip, they'd only move on to something else. I suspect national hunt racing will be the next thing. So, you know, in politics, I always say to people that politicians don't make logical decisions. They make political decisions. And these decisions that the Labour Party are coming out with aren't based on reason. They're based on what they think is a political advantage by appealing to a group of voters that they want to attract at the next election. So arguing with them with reason doesn't make any difference. They're not interested in the evidence.
I actually invited Sue Heyman, who was the lady that obviously is announcing all of these manifestos, on to speak with me, but obviously did not receive a reply, unfortunately. I wonder why. Yes. But she did say she wanted to bring Britain's animal welfare policy into the 21st century. What do you think of that statement?
Well, nobody's more passionate about animal welfare than me, and I maintain that the people who work in the horse racing industry are the most passionate lovers of animals and horses in particular that you can find. So I don't think anybody in the racing industry, I don't think stable staff and I don't think jockeys and trainers need any lessons from Sue Heyman or Jeremy Corbyn about animal welfare and the importance of looking after animals. What she might want to do is actually go around some racing stables, meet the people who are involved in horses and actually learn something for herself before pontificating about things that she clearly knows absolutely nothing about.
So do you think there's room to bring the whip into Parliament? How would that work?
Yeah, the BHA can hold a reception in Parliament. I'm quite happy to sponsor a room in Parliament for them to do so. I'd like them to bring the whip in and say, look, this is the whip that we use. It's air cushioned. Try it out on yourself. I'm sure there'll be plenty of MPs who'll be more than happy to...
I'll volunteer to whip some of them.
to try it out, and they'll be able to see for themselves that it doesn't actually hurt. And if it doesn't actually hurt a human, how on earth do you think it's going to hurt half a ton of horse? Lord only knows. And so I just think it would help if they did that so people could at least educate themselves rather than the BHA not taking that opportunity, which I think would be a massive wasted opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely let them know about that, because that could be an incredible opportunity, as you say, to be able to educate some of these MPs, and hopefully they will listen to what this whip is all about. And hopefully at some point we'll stop coming onto the attack line in the industry. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the industry, kind of from your position, that could possibly help us move forward with this?
I just think that they need to be robust in standing up for the industry, standing up for what we know to be right, and actually not pandering, not to extremists, not virtue signalling, but actually being proud of the fact of what we do in the racing industry, of how much we look after horses, how much we love our horses. And I just think that the industry just needs to be much more robust in defending what it does, and like I say, not virtue signalling, not pandering to people who you can't appease. And I think that because if we don't stand up for ourselves, why would we expect anybody else to stand up for us?
Well put, really good. Thank you so much, Philip, for joining me today. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for watching, and do make sure you check out my previous YouTube video as mentioned in this show. And if the BHA is watching, I really do hope you do take Philip up on his offer, and let's get some whips into Parliament.